Winterbottom, the angry warlock Westfield, had hunted me down and I'd fought back, but by no means were my powers fully restored. So who knew, even if the spell's results ended up wonky, that they'd ever in a million years work? Deep in my subconscious, I'm pretty sure I thought I was simply going through the motions to pacify my fears until a better solution came along. You know, sort of like in times of trouble, turn to what you know. Turns out my powers aren't as dead as I thought. They still, in small instances, see desperation, exist. They just don't work the way they're supposed to. And since the day I'd tried every spell in the book to bring Win back to me, the residual after effects of all those sad attempts had been popping up in the weirdest ways. Namely, the baby dinosaur I'd conjured. I know. A dinosaur can be an inconvenience, sure. However, you say inconvenience, I say history in the making. Seriously, how many living, breathing dinosaurs do you get to see in this lifetime? None. That's how many. But even if he'd been a snippy little bugger, he really was quite cute. And he disappeared after a couple of days with only a few plants torn to smithereens in his wake. No harm, no foul. But add to that, Win was still hearing ghosts, something he wasn't at all displeased about. I, however, was not hearing little but the roar of his demands. We'd set aside the fact that he could still hear Arcady and decided not to delve too deeply into the whys and wherefores. We don't even know why I was ever able to hear Arcady or Win. Win was simply glad he could still hear his friend, and I was too. We'd deal with the afterlife and all its complexities once he was on his feet. "Stevie?" Belfry poked me with a wing. I stared out the kitchen nook bay of windows, watching the choppy waters flow by without really seeing anything. Their frothy caps bubbling along soothed me. Uh-huh. "Winterbutt's calling, again." Really? I've grown so used to him bellowing my name I almost didn't hear. "Don't be a sass-face. You did so hear him." Okay, I lied. I heard him. "So what do you think he wants now? You suppose another one of those hinky spells you whipped up is seeing some more nutty fruition?" I narrowed my gaze at him and cocked my head. Meaning? "Meaning maybe you've raised David Bowie from the dead, but he has no eyeballs and arms?" Well, that would certainly change a live performance of China Girl, wouldn't it? Belfry sounded out a derisive snort. "You're making it with the funny when this is anything but funny, Stevie B. How many heckin' spells did you cast anyway?" I stroked the top of his head. You were there too, Belle. Yeah, I was there, but I was so focused on your mental state and wiping the beads of sweat from your brow I can't remember. So what's left? The apocalypse?" I swished my coffee around in my mug, my shoulders slumping. Like I can remember? Desperate times, my friend. That's all I can tell you. I was terrified and I was willing to try any incantation I could remember. "Welp, I think you tried them all. What I still can't wrap my head around is that they sort of worked in an abstract, messed-up way. Your powers, all of your powers, were totally slapped out of you. You're not supposed to be able to so much as lift a thimbleful of water, so what gives?" Working is a relative term, Belle. They're not exactly working. And sure, maybe some flaky things have happened in the last week, but nothing so horrible we haven't been able to deal with it. Belle lifted his tiny chin and looked up at me with his soft brown eyes. "You don't think that glacier in the backyard was a problem, boss?" I sighed. Okay, that had been hard to hide, but we managed. Nothing some heat lamps and 100 tarps from Home Depot didn't cure while we waited for it to melt. "I gotta hand it to you. The fancy footwork you did with Dana and Melba when they came to check on you after your meltdown was inspired. I can't believe you told him you were thinking of taking up ice sculpting. Way to think on your feet." Dana and Melba had indeed come to see just how I was faring after an epic meltdown, just at the moment I thought Win was lost to us, to me, forever. It was ugly and painful for me to remember the sheer rawness of my emotions that night. But like the true friends they are, they'd come back to reassure me I could count on them even when I'd pushed them away. I would always be grateful for that kind of unconditional friendship and support. But when they'd shown up this week, I was in the middle of dealing with one of my spells gone rogue, and it had taken some quick thinking to explain why we had 20 or so heat lamps in the backyard. I shot Belle a coy smile and winked. Even I have to admit that I had a little bit of genius. And don't you give me any grief about telling them I had the...